Well, hello and welcome back, everybody, to the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. I'm Dan John. This is episode 248, getting close to that magical 250 barrier. This is a question and answer podcast. You ask questions. I do my best to answer them. If you have questions, send them to us at podcast@DanJohnUniversity.com. I'll do my best to answer each and every one. Today we've got a nice selection. Some weeks, this week's a good example, we have a lot of kettlebell questions. Some weeks we have a lot of easy strength questions. But it's interesting how the flow comes in. So let's get started, and we start right away with a couple of kettlebell questions. Here we go. Brett asks this. I have always wanted to ask you if the rep scheme for your ABC armor building complex workout has any significance, or is it primarily the movements themselves that makes the armor building complex such a great workout? For example, would going 3-2-1 or 1-2-3, or just mixing up the numbers up every now and then still be good? Well, Brett, the armor building complex was put together when I was asked at a kettlebell certification to come up with something because, and I talk about this in the new book, and I've talked about this on this podcast many times. One of the problems you have, especially the way the Russian kettlebell certifications used to be, RKC used to be, it was just, I didn't like it. The faux military stuff always bothered me a little bit. My brother Gary one time watched one of our certs. He's a disabled American veteran, and he had some colorful phrases for what he thought about what, way some people were treating the candidates, and it was helpful for me, and I related along to John Duquesne and Pavel. So you got a very tired group. Their hands are very broken up, and their pressing and overhead power is really suspect at this time. Well, especially in the United States, where we have a bench press culture, a push-up culture, a throws culture. The vertical press work, and that would be something as simple as the waiter walk, something as complex as the Turkish get-up, the press family, the snatch. All those really seem to exacerbate any issues you have with the shoulders or anything else in that whole chain. It probably goes from the tip of your fingers down to your heels and toes, because, if you've ignored vertical pressing, it will come back to bite you in a 3-day certification where everything's going overhead. So we had to be careful about the hands because they're just so ripped up from all the swings and the vertical stuff. So it was interesting because there are certifications that have you do high swings to finish off. Well, you've tested them on swings all weekend. I don't think you need more. So my first thought was we've got to get a program that is simple. Armor building complex. 2 double kettlebell cleans, 1 double kettlebell press, 3 double kettlebell front squats. And I'm okay if you forget it a few times, but it's pretty simple to memorize. I do a set, you do a set, I do a set, you do a set, and we just keep going. Why the single press? Because you have a group of people who are kind of tapped out with their pressing. Why just the 2 cleans? You have a group of people. Interesting, the kettlebell clean doesn't seem to be as hard on the hands as the snatch, kettlebell snatch. Now, part of my head just said, well, that was the understatement of this year so far. The kettlebell clean is oddly easier on the hands. And then once you get it here, you can just hold the handle here and let the weights dangle. When my hands are beat up, this is how I press. And then I front squat, like this, I'm just saving my hands. Back when I used to do this as a candidate, do the certs. The 2 cleans are easy on the hands. The single press is easy on the press, and you can front squat forever sometimes, okay? So the 3 front squats, they're also all Fibonacci numbers. There's a kind of a rhythm to 2-1-3, 2-1-3. What you'll notice when you get tired, it'll go 2, 1, and then 3 will go 1, 2, 3, and then make this noise and put the bell down, and hopefully your partner will take their time front squatting too. So the nice thing is it's easy on a tired group. Well, it doesn't take long to figure out that it was also a really popular workout after that, as people told me. It's a great finisher. That's kind of what my first, the first feedback I got is a great finisher. You do you do a traditional kettlebell workout. You work the basics. You practice the Turkish get up. Maybe you do this, you do that. Rite of passage, whatever it is. And at the end, you can just really go after it with the armor building complex. Then people said that they really liked the way they looked and felt afterwards. And this is where the name armor building came from. As I went back and I thought about my work with American football and the phrase, so I have two phrases I probably overuse. Anaconda strength is my word for that internal inner tube pressure that you need for the big lifts and throws. If you ever decide to do a caber toss, the biggest caber I've ever flipped was 185 pounds, 82.5 kilos maybe. It might be a little more, 85 kilos. Anytime you decide to sprint with a telephone pole that weighs that much, you will discover that it's not so bad on the hands and biceps, but it's tough on everything else, and you have to have that squeeze strength. So that's anaconda strength. Armor is that ability to deal with this in a sport. When I wrestled, I've had massive issues with this side of my face I think I've broken my nose 6 times, okay? And this is a fake tooth, 3 surgeries. Finally found a thing that I can now breathe through my right nostril, which was nice after almost 50 years of not being able to do it. When I first wrestled, every day in wrestling practice, my nose would just bleed out. And then back then we would take wet toilet paper and stuff it up there, and then I'd come back to practice. And of course, how lucky all my teammates were that I could have, my disgusting ooze and blood all over the place. But then after about 2 weeks, it stopped bleeding. If you've ever been on a judo mat for the first time, you might wake up the next day and feel these. It's almost like scratches. It's almost like, but you can feel the mat the next day. After 2 months of judo or any martial art you do, you don't notice that anymore. Maybe the first time you, walk on the beach in the summer, you might notice the sand. I can guarantee 2 days later, you don't notice it. To me, that's what armor building is. It's and it's more than just toughening up your skin, though I actually think that's a factor. So the reason we came with the armor building complex is when I look back on my time with American football, they were also the exercises that my running backs would tell me that the game felt like. They felt that the double kettlebell clean felt like the hits they were getting. We ran the veer. It felt like the contact they were getting. And they also told me that they thought that the double kettlebell front squat was excellent just to keep everything tight, like when you're being tackled or, you're trying to get a few extra yards. So I decided to call it the armor building complex. And that's the whole story. I don't know if it's historically important. I know 200, 300 years from now, in Washington, D.C., they'll be having a day commemorating the ABC workout. I don't know. We'll pick some fun. August 28th will be the day we celebrate the ABC workout. But it was fun. Can you change it up? Well, everybody does. I mean, every workout I come out with, people will change it without even doing it one time. I remember when I wrote the article about the Tabata front squat and about how exhausting it was. And the first comment on over at T Nation was, if it's so good, why don't you do it every day? And I thought, you must have missed the part about how I felt like I was going to die. The 10,000 swing challenge workout came, and literally in the forum there at T Nation, within minutes, people said, why don't you do this instead? I know for a fact that they couldn't have done the 10,000 swing challenge because it was day one when it came out. People like to adapt workouts. People like to change workouts. And that's one of the biggest problems I have in helping people. Someone halfway through the rite of passage, which is a question I get a lot on this podcast, they'll want to add to it. Well, if you're doing the rite of passage, a kettlebell workout correctly, at least the way I did it, I didn't feel like adding anything to it. It's a pretty good workout. So yeah, go ahead, do anything you want, but I think you'll find that those numbers, they're kind of tried and true. They work. Can you do better? Fine, you do better. But remember, my highest standard for any program is pretty good. There's always perfect. I even have that workout as a joke. I call it the perfect workout. But perfect is real tough to find. I stick with pretty good, and I think those numbers are pretty good. So there you go. You had a next question. I'm also curious if you ever get to hold kettlebell certs here locally in Utah. Well, Brett, yeah, I do. Here in my backyard, I've held a number of things. I like it a lot. It's very easy on me. The problem we always have is people just aren't going to certifications anymore. I like doing my home for a number of reasons. I have 3 bathrooms. My downstairs living room easily can turn into a classroom. I've got these church tables, I call them church tables, and I've got church chairs, and I can set that up. And so on breaks, we just come down the stairs. I can control a lot of things, like I have coffee out all day long because I have a I keep using, church coffee. I've got one of those church coffee urns, and it's terrible. The coffee's terrible, but beggars can't be choosers, whatever. It's real easy for me. We also have a nice hotel over here. I also do various workshops for companies here. Sadly, one of the places I used to do workshops for a lot, James Parker's place. Sadly, James died. Great friend of mine, Utah State thrower, Olympian in the hammer throw. He died, sadly, of long-term COVID issues. Breaks my heart. I've done workshops at most of the major gym chains out here. Not to the one, I haven't done any at the one that doesn't like people like me training there. I can't remember if I'm a lunk. I think it's a lunk. But yeah, I try to do a lot of workshops best I can. Brett, the issue, as always, is that, and it happens all the time. I just did a workshop in England, and someone pinged me and said I would have gone, except it was 2 hours away. And I thought to myself, I have to fly 10 hours in a flight, and then take a very long Uber ride, and then a very long car ride. And then I have to spend probably 3 nights in hotels before I even start working. But by God, you had to go 2 hours. So it's tough, Brett. I host them here, but if people don't come, I quit hosting them. And that's kind of what happened in the last few years. I'd love to see certifications and workshops go back to they were about a decade ago, when it was 100, 110 people, and now it's 10 people. All right. Thank you. These are good questions, Brett. Thank you. Sam asked a question. A question tailored to me. I like that. Tailored to you. As a mid-40s guy whose goals are longevity, major back injury in my past, health, and then my sport, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's an interesting combination. Your longevity is important. Your health's important, and then you're in a fighting sport. Interesting. Is progressive overload something that I should be aiming for? Just as a broad question before we get any farther, Sam, I constantly think that progressive resistance exercise is the answer to so many things. The mistake people make is when they hear progressive, some people only hear load. More weight, more weight, more weight. There's other people who just hear more reps. If 10's good, 10,000 has to be better. You don't hear a lot of people arguing for sets, but I'm a big fan of adding sets. And of course, the other one is density, and that's the same amount of work in less time, or more work in the same time. But all 4 of those options I gave you are progressive. You could also progress, and if you go to my workshops, I have that thing I call the movement matrix, and I don't know why I call it matrix. Sometimes I'll put a name on something because it's like some trendy term at the time, and years later I'll forget why I did it. Sadly, that's more true than you think. Like, for example, I think the glute bridge, which is the isometric hip thrust top position, blends itself nicely into the hip thrust and the rack deadlift. That blends itself well into like hill sprints in my world, high knee work, which blends itself well into swings, which blends itself well into the Olympic lifts. And you can kind of see how there's a progression there of movement patterns, and I like that a lot. So just for the record, Sam, constantly be thinking about progression in all of its forms, not just load. More context. I'm doing the RKC prep program Pavel wrote. Well, why don't you do the RKC program that I wrote? But okay. I just finished with the 20 kettlebell for the clean and press and 16K for the snatch. More generally, do you subscribe to benefits of it and program for it general fitness? At what point should someone move up in the kettlebell? And he has a final point here. Or are there other ways to continually get stronger other than add 5 pounds once you get to sets of X? Yeah, and you're there right now. So I'm guessing from the exercises you mentioned that you're talking about the rite of passage, but I could be wrong. When you do something like the rite of passage, let's just stay with the 2 exercises. So, it's clean and press, clean and press, clean and press. That's a set of 3. Clean and press, you do a set of 4. Clean and you do a set of 5. Great. Well, from there, if you're starting to feel like, you're getting stymied by all those cleans, well, then you can go to clean and press, 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 press. Pretty simple variation. If you decide to jump and load and that's too heavy, you can go to clean and then just add a little leg to it, the push press, boom, and snap it up. It's a little dip. It's not a good morning. It's just a dip, and just add a little bit and snap it over your head. You'll add more load that way. And then the other thing I would do on those, bring them down as slow as you can. Down slow, a little bit of leg. So just with this simple thing, the clean and press with the kettlebell, you can go clean and press, clean and press, clean and press until you feel like the cleans are starting to hurt your press. Then you can go clean and press, press, press. When that feels a little heavy, you can go clean, push press, push press, push press. So there's always ways to progress ahead. And I think a lot of people miss that. Now, let's go right back to the thought process here on progression. If you do something like, and that's one of the things I like people to think about in the 10,000 swing challenge, is Sam, you'd be surprised how many variations that have come across my desk. I mean, sometimes I'm like, man, everybody overthinks this. But one of my favorite ideas is you just do the 500 swings in a workout. And at the end of the workout, you write how long it took you to do it. I wouldn't do this every single time, but maybe once a week, the second workout of every week, you just time yourself to see if you can bring that total time down. Total time. And of course, if you've got 500 swings in 42 minutes the first time, test next week and it's 32 minutes for the 500 swings, I'm gonna kind of shrug my shoulders and say, yeah, that's progress. Obviously, there's another way you can do this. If you find, for example, with the bells you have, like the 20, you get kind of stuck around, say, 8 reps with the press at the 20. Well, you can just do more sets, but keep the sets in that 4 or 5 range. One of the things that Mike Warren Brown and I are doing right now is we are trying to increase the number of total sets we're doing, but keep the total reps about the same. So that's a lot of talking. But if I'm doing, let's say I'm just going to do 40 presses in a workout. Well, I can take a lightweight and do 2 sets of 20. I can take a heavier weight and do 10 sets of 4. I can take an even heavier weight and do 5. You get how things are going. So you keep the total the same, but you add more sets. For a lot of home trainers, I think adding more sets is a really good idea. I'd like you to kind of underline what I just said. When you're a home trainer, and I've been there. At one time, the only equipment I had was a 28 kilo kettlebell. Another time in my life, all I had was an Olympic bar and a total of 75 kilos, 165 pounds. That's all I had to train with. So one time just a kettlebell, and one time just a barbell with not a lot of weight. And I had to really think things through. At the time, I couldn't afford just to go out and buy more equipment. So what I did is I had to, buy more brain space and think it out. So what I want you to do is, obviously, if you have a full kettlebell set, you can just say, okay, the 20 is now too light. I will now do the 24, and good for you. And it's a good answer. If you're at a local gym and all they have is machines and they got those selectorized plates, and E is too easy, you go to F, which always cracks me up, but that's fine. I want to use letters as instead of weights. You just take the thingy and put it down one, and you've just progressed in load. You'll probably find, Sam, as most people do, as you progress in just pure reps in the kettlebell world, they become a little, I was going to say sloppy, but you'll know what I'm talking about when you see it, when someone's just, beating the hell out of the 16K bell and they're not really getting anything out of it because it's far too light for them. What you could do if you're doing presses with the 16K bell, one thought I always have is let's find a different way to press. I do like the waiter press. That's where you hold the globe and press. You'll notice that even when I just explain it, I'm explaining it with a perpendicular, my forearm is perpendicular to the ground, or the great bottoms up press where you hold the handle and then you have the horns here and have the bell up. It's very unstable, and that forces you to lift better. When do you know when to go up on load is, to me, usually pretty obvious. But I have to be careful because it's like with easy strength. When I say, well, start light, the follow-up question is always, what do you mean by light? And my brain is like, how do you not know what a light weight is? It's a weight you easily master and you don't have to warm up for, and you could probably do it, without 100% focus. But once you find that a weight is just no longer a challenge, that's the best time to jump up for most people in most situations. Now, a lot of us have to do heavier presses, like for certifications or maybe even tests. That's a different question. But for your goals of longevity and health, I would always err on perfect technique, appropriate reps and sets. And the goal for you, Sam, is to always come back to the gym. If you work out on Monday, you should feel excited to come back to lift on Wednesday. When you lift on Wednesday, you should feel very excited to come back on Friday, or however the days work. Okay? Thank you, Sam. It's a good question. I appreciate it. So we have another question about the armor building complex. Derek asked this. My question is regarding the armor building complex. I hear you speak of doing 15 to 30 rounds of this complex. I struggle to get through 10 cycles of every minute on the minute while using my 55-pound bells. So he's basically using 24s. I also have a pair of 35-pound bells, 16K, but they also seem too light. What do you suggest to improve this? It's interesting because I also answer the question all the time, what bells do I recommend for most home users? And I always say the double 20s. And you'll notice, folks, that the bells he doesn't have are the double 20s, the 44-pounders. That's not a problem. Also, could you elaborate more on the ABC being a finisher? I hear you mention how you came up with it as a finisher for the RKC or something. It seems like more are using it as a standalone versus adding it into a regular workout. Yeah, so Derek, in this podcast, I tell that entire story about where I came up with it. Now, let's just break down the question a little bit here. Not long ago, finishers was the most popular topic, I think, at least in the personal training side of the fitness industry. I've never been a fan of finishers. It's like I'm not a fan of wind sprints either for athletes. People tend to save, and I don't know what they're saving, but they're always saving some energy for the wind sprints, the conditioning period of a football program, or the finisher. I like to plan my finisher more inside the workout, so that after I get people tired, then they'll listen to me about the stuff that's really important, like mobility, working the glutes, working the vertical press, proper technique, proper nutrition. When people are gasping for air, then they want to listen about nutrition. So you might remember a few years ago, people were coming out with books that were, 300 finishers and, 500 kettlebell finishers and all these things like that. And most of them were just complexes of do this, do that, do this, do that. And the problem is, my good friend Pat Flynn knows I'm hit him with this. In his book, Paleo Fitness for Dummies, Paleo Workouts for Dummies is the follow-up. The dummies thing, come on. When I finished all the workouts in the book, and for the record, there's 180 workouts, 180-day program. I did it. So just for the record, folks, I would strongly recommend before you criticize a program, you do it. And I did. And one of the issues I had with Pat's, and he agrees with this, is that a lot of the complexes that were the finishers, I had to keep a piece of paper like right in my eyesight. I finally figured out to type it up and make the fonts massive so I could just look down in the middle and see that I was going to do this next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But my brain was so scattered, going back and forth. It was really hard for me to keep the intensity high. One of the upsides about the ABC, about finishing with the snatch test, it's pretty straightforward. The snatch test, do 100 snatches. Okay, then I go. There's not a lot of thinking there. My knock on finishers always was that I want people to walk out of the gym remembering a good workout, remembering the important things. Very often people just walk out of the workout remembering how horrible the last part was. How I Met Your Mother has a really interesting, Barney, of course, is the funniest part, but they all decide to join a gym because they're out of shape. And the one personal trainer is just horrid to Marshall. And it's good to watch, On day one, she screams at him to do 100 push-ups and calls him all kinds of offensive names. To me, that's the fitness industry at its worst. Not long ago, the ABC got adopted as a training program by itself, and I like it very much, Derek. People just said, well, if I can just do this simple complex and get all my dreams come true, well, why do everything else? So that's what happened. So what's happening, Derek, in real time in your life, you're watching a thing that we did at CERTS that was more of a finisher evolve into a full training program. And I don't know when it'll be out, but my book discusses how I've been advising people to use it. I used it myself. I had some nice benefits out of it. My body weight came down, and the joke was for a long time that I had to walk, around the house like this because my shoulders couldn't fit down the hallways because I was so broad, But it's a wonderful combination. The armor building complex, 1 or 2 days a week, and then you alternate that with 1 or 2 days a week of high rep presses. And I just gave you the whole book. There's more, but not much. So that's what happened. So it's kind of fun if you think about it. In real time, you are watching a program evolve. Say like you picked up on the 10,000 swing challenge when we first started doing it. Oh, let's be about, I don't think it was a decade ago, but it was enough time ago that, I forgot when it started. But to watch the 10,000 swing challenge go from being a challenge to a fundraiser to an annual event, it was kind of fun to watch. I am amazed in January how many people reach out to me and say, our gym is doing the 10,000 swing challenge for January. And I think it's wonderful. Very often I'll tape a congratulations or a little video of thanks, or if somebody has a special story, I'll reach out to them. But you're also so I watched the 10,000 swing challenge evolve from a hard thing to try to let's all do this as a community, to an annual event. So I don't know. I think it's fun. I do think it works well as a standalone program, but you can only do it 1 day a week for 1 week, 2 days a week the next. And you really have to trust me on that advice. Of course, you can certainly do it 10 times a week if you like, but just look at the squat numbers and tell me if that makes sense to you. Derek, great question. And it's interesting to hear how popular the armor building complex is. And hopefully a lot of more questions will be answered when the book comes out and is available. Thank you. So I have a question from Joe. Listening to your podcast 233, Well, you spoke on the Sleepless in Seattle standards. I was wondering, do you have any ideas on standards for sprints or maybe cardio conditioning? Even if they were not the multi-tier system, but perhaps an expected or game changer. I realize this might be very sports specific, but I'm just thinking for overall wellness, physical preparation. Conditioning standards are always a tough one to come up with, Joe. It just, so my brother Phil, of blessed memory, he had Southwood's junior high 880 record, and it stood a long time. And I mean, a long time. And I was coaching. Now, he was a freshman when he did hit this, and he also played 2 other sports, so we didn't really specialize in it. And then I coached at this high school where this dad was telling me about, they were telling me about how we had this superstar, and this superstar wasn't as fast as my brother Phil in the 9th grade. That's the beauty of track and field, is that you can look at numbers and you can say, this is good and this is bad. So one thing you can do, Joe, you could maybe just look up, and I always recommend people go look at the masters records. If you ever want to have, in every sport too. Now, obviously in Olympic lifting, because they keep changing the weights, the numbers in the masters divisions aren't always great. I will say this, and my brother makes fun of me about this, my brother Gary, because I keep breaking records, and he keeps saying, well, there's not that many guys your age at that weight who are still alive. And I thought, that's funny. So one thing you might want to do is either go to the Masters track and field, Masters weightlifting, Masters powerlifting, and look at the records. And one of the things I want you to look at is look at some of those records in the sprints. It's in the 75 year age division. They're very good numbers. Now, I say that because I coached the high school wide receiver who thought he was, God's gift to humanity, who ran a 16-second 100 meters. Now, the joke, of course, you time that with a sundial, not with a fully automatic timing. It was funny at the time, maybe it's not now. But the thing about track and those kinds of standards is you get a real good idea of what is good. Now, you might just want to say to yourself, and this would be a great standard, I want to be faster than the world record holder in the 80 age group, and then bring it down after that. So what are some good standards? Well, when I was young, the mile was considered the test of conditioning. At my high school, you had to run, if you're someone who held the ball in American football, you had to run 7 minutes, and if you were a lineman, 7.5. Truly, that's not very fast. If you want to run on a 440 track, not a 400 meter track, but it's close enough. That means a minute and a half per lap to break 6, which isn't that hard. As a senior in high school, I did 14 pull-ups, and I ran a 5:51 mile when we got tested on the 5th day of double sessions. I still think those are pretty good numbers for a post, an exhausted person. That's pretty good. So that's a simple number, 7-minute mile. That's doable, believable. Would it be a game changer? I think so too. You could also maybe just do yourself a favor. So the mile might be just so I'm kind of doing this, if you don't mind. I'm giving you master sprint numbers. And then I think high school American football, who they don't train for this, 7.5 minutes for a mile. If you just want to use it as a 1600, it'll be close enough for the conversation. Well, then from there, I think, and this is a very simple thing, finish a 10K without walking. Okay, that would be the only thing I'd ask is don't walk. If you at some level keep your, if you can test yourself in 100 meters, pretty simple. Every local track has 100 meters. Get yourself a time, get a sense of where you are. Try the mile time, finish a 10K. Those would be those great kind of line in the sand ones for conditioning. Obviously from there, going from, I feel like I'm quoting Dave Tate again. Dave Tate famously would say, there's good training programs, there's bad training programs, there's training programs that suck, and then he used a potty word. and there are programs that are just horrendous. And the funny thing is, to go from horrendous to sucks is actually a leap. So if you run a 19-second 100-meter and you get yourself to 15.8, that's great progress. You're still not very good, but hey, you're doing well. Finishing a 10K without walking isn't going to get you on the Olympic team, but it's better than finishing not being able to run a 10K. So I want you to think that way on these standards. If you have follow-up questions on this, Joe, just remind me, because I'd love to talk about this more. I'm sure I'm missing some other areas, but my thoughts first are look up the master's numbers, and then think about that high school football mile standard, and think about completing the 10K challenge. Okay, thanks. Carlos asks a question. I'm a long-time listener and first-time caller, and this is his first question. I've been thinking about using Easy Strength to get back into lifting once I'm cleared by my ortho. I suffered a distal bicep rupture back in September, and I've been unable to lift since then. I'd like to, that's a rough one. I'm hearing that more and more lately. I'm wondering if there's something going on, but okay. Since the loads are very low, just the bar, 5-pound dumbbells for me in the beginning, and you get to practice the movement multiple times a week, have you given any thought to using Easy Strength as a coming back to training system? Carlos, it's funny, I haven't, but a whole bunch of good people tell me that's what they do, and it makes me kind of happy. I've had, in the United States, we call them physical therapists. Some places are called physios, but I've had people tell me that this is how they get people back into shape. And it's funny because, if you're a big engine guy and you have to bench press 20 kilos, 45 pounds for 5, it might break your heart a little bit. But remember, if I'm coaching you, I'm going to say, well, that's fine. We'll come back tomorrow and we'll add a little weight and see how that feels. You're fine. Come back tomorrow. And if the nice thing is, I want to feel that little with 45 pounds, not with 345, if that makes sense to you. So yeah, this idea of slowly waving yourself up in intensity is very popular with a lot of people. I mean, once I heard it, and it was actually from one of my students who said they used it at their facility, I just went, you just kind of say, duh, it was a duh moment for me. Because I don't think in the idea of rehab as much, I guess I should. But the moment he said it, it made sense. I think it's a good idea. The thing that makes, and just kind of, again, this will be, underline this. The thing that makes Easy Strength work, generally, is when somebody has had some experience in weightlifting, has had some kind of break in your, break from training. In your case, you got injured, had to stop, and then come back. Because we know you're going to rebound up to those old numbers very quickly. The research used to say 6 to 12 weeks. But at the same time, give it the 6 to 12 weeks and not the 6 or 12 minutes, okay? Great question. And good luck on this recovery. I hope it goes well. Kyle asks a question, and it's tough, Kyle. He says this, as a strength coach, how do you prepare your athletes to be as strong as possible while their conditioning coaches simultaneously prepare their engines for redlining? Well, this has been the problem here in the United States with American football, but I've been told it's a problem in all kinds of football programs, basketball programs, is we have this plan about conditioning, and then we'll have a bad game or something will happen over the weekend, and the head coach decides to punish the athletes on Monday. So we had this big plan, this multi-tiered, all these things coming in, all this scientific jargon and all this stuff. And coach is in a bad mood, makes them do gassers until everybody throws up and we lose. Not only do we lose that training session, but we lose 2 or 3 more. And also too, the athletes are now realizing we're not going to practice hard because he's just going to blow us out on the wind sprints, gassers, conditioners, whatever we talk about. Kyle, that's the best thing about my career in the last, it's been a while. It's been a number, I'd say 30, I'd say 3 decades easy. 30 decades would be impressive. I'm the throws coach I'm the strength coach, I'm the conditioning coach. When you see my throwers condition, you might say they're not doing anything. And that's right, they're not. We do skips, we do cross crawls, Tim Anderson stuff. We do backward running, and we will do hills because, I don't want my throwers pulling a hamstring, competing on some, silly sprint. So our conditioning is very small because the amount of actual conditioning you need to be a thrower is what it needs to be. And any more isn't going to help you throw far. I don't know how you do it. Kyle, I don't know how you do it. There's a great book called The Game Stands Tall. And I actually spent some time with one of the coaches in the book. And one of the things that's cool about that program, De La Salle, is one of the assistant coaches walked up to the head coach at a practice one time and said, "Coach, we still going to have a game on Friday night?" The coach goes, "Of course we are." And he goes, "Well, we've run 85 offensive plays already in practice, and we generally run 65 in the game. So you've just run these kids through an entire game leading up to the game." And I guess the head coach said, "Thank you," and completely rethought the way they did their training week. I'm a big believer in Tommy Kono's phrase, it's better to come in a little bit under conditioned than anything over conditioned. I found that when I don't train as insanely, I can pull out a big lift at an Olympic lifting meet. But if I overtrain, I can barely make my openers. So that is a key. And that is a good question. It's a good point. Kyle, I don't know, didn't give us a lot of specifics here, but you really did put your finger right on top of the biggest problem in my world. It's the head coach wanting to punish the entire program for something that happened on a weekend or something that happened in a classroom or something that happened on the field. And it's not going to make us a better football team. It's not going to make us a better that team, this team. It's just punishing the athletes. And the sad thing is you rarely punish the athletes who are the troublemakers anyway. The longer I coach, the longer I realize that, and I have some coaching mentors who agree with me, is you got to get rid of the bad apples. I make a phrase about kids sometimes. It's not if they're going to disappoint you, it's when. And when do you want to be disappointed? In the last seconds of the state meet, the last seconds of the conference championship, at the trials or whatever. You're going to get disappointed. You're just waiting there with folded arms. And your question is solid, Kyle. And it's something I think a lot of head coaches need to be schooled on a little bit better. Thank you. Good question. Neil asks a question that I like very much. I power snatch and power clean more than I squat, either of those, and they're all low numbers. Yeah, I did too in the beginning too. It was only until I started front squatting 5 days a week that I was able to overcome that, Neil. And I don't recommend that for anybody else. To try to improve, I've been finishing each squat snatch with an overhead squat and each clean with a front squat. I love that idea. What do you recommend for someone scared or maybe lacking the mobility to jump under the bar after the first pull? Oh, I wish I would have you at my home gym right now. Okay, first off, you just described the drill. It's called the drill that we use. So it goes like this. It's a power snatch followed by an overhead squat. I would suggest you wear straps if you have grip issues. Say at the top of the overhead squat, you go into a hang squat snatch. And in the third exercise, you bring the bar to the floor, briefly touch the ground, and do a full squat snatch. So power snatch and overhead squat, one. Hang squat snatch, full from the floor squat snatch, and do the same. I like that. Now, I also like your idea, and this was something I saw a friend of mine. He was trained in the Soviet system, not the one you read in those books, the actual system, okay? And it was really a big thing for him to do a squat clean and then follow it up with 2 more squats. When he was doing squat clean training, it was always 1 plus 2, always. And he said that it was to build the reserve front squat power. And I thought, it's good enough for me. If you're struggling to jump under the bar, the drill I use is called the 1-inch drill. It'd be nice to have me with you, but so you get in the bars on the floor, and I'll say up, and you raise the bar 1 inch off the ground. Hold, up, 1 more inch taller, up, another inch higher, up, another inch higher. When you get at the patella, you're struggling with the bars of the patella. You push the chin forward, you wiggle your toes, whatever you got to do to get that position. Then I say up, and then you bring the bar to the top of your knees. Then I say 3, 2, 1, jump, and you do the Olympic lift. The reason it works so well for a young lifter is it trains the tempo of the lift. That start slow and explode tempo. Now, if you're the Chinese national coach, you're probably listening to what I'm saying and saying that's not right. But if you're working with somebody who's older, asking in a forum, asking in a podcast, it's good advice. It works. That's called the inch drill, and the other one was called the drill, which is always a funny statement. I hope that helps. Try them both. Get back to me. Send me a video if you can. Okay? Thank you. Aaron asked a question. I wanted to know if you have ever run easy strength with one-arm barbell hinge variations. That is one-arm deadlifts, one-arm hack deadlifts. If yes, do you find that these types of lift are a good fit for easy strength? If no, would they be something you would recommend? Well, I've never done it. I mean, I don't. I know there's great value in the one-arm deadlift for throwers, but I prefer the suitcase carry because you don't have as much load, but I think you get the same benefits plus more. You get that spiraling effect on every step. A friend of mine, Bill, did the Jefferson lift. The only bit of advice I would say if you're going to do the one-arm deadlifts is that don't think you have 2 sets of 5 on the right and then 2 sets of 5 on the left. Think 1 set right, 1 set left, move along. Now, obviously, someone has to ask the question, what if you're doing 3 sets of 3? Well, don't. Do 4 sets of 3. 1 set right of 3, 1 set left of 3, 1 set right of 3, 1 set left of 3. I know that breaks the easy strength numbers, but, I'm trying to make this thing work. Is there a value to that? To the one-arm stuff, I would be interesting to find out. Now, the nice thing Bill said to me was that after a few days, he really got a sense of I remember him telling this, squaring up and locking everything down and really knitting himself to the bar. So if you're going to do the one-handed deadlift for 5s, which probably is about where I'd want you to be, you'll probably quickly figure out how tight you have to be on the opposite side. So if it's a right-hand deadlift, you'll probably figure out how much you have to squeeze your left side down, and there'll be a whole bunch of mental steps for you to practice. Long term, I think that's going to be great for anything you decide to do. Aaron, I like the idea. Again, if you wouldn't mind, if you find success with it, get back to me. And also, I'd love to see a video of you doing this one-arm hack deadlift. I've never seen that. I mean, certainly I could go in the gym and figure something out, but I'd like to see what you mean by that, if you don't mind. Thank you. Well, that's it for questions today. That was a good set. A lot of kettlebell questions, some easy strength questions, a nice mix. As I'm speaking, I don't know if the Armor Building Complex, the ABC book will be ready yet. It should be soon. I don't know when this is coming out. Remember, if you have questions, send them to us at podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. Each and every week, I sit down and answer as best I can the questions you send in. And until next time, let's all keep on lifting and learning. Thank you.